This free step-by-step video comes to you directly from Haynes. You can complete more than 200 jobs on this vehicle when you purchase the complete Haynes online manual at haynes.com.
Note: the belt and tensioner must be replaced if removed. The water pump is driven by the engine's timing belt, which has to be removed when renewing the pump. In light of this, if a new timing belt is being fitted after a high mileage, for peace of mind, some owners will also fit a new pump. Timing belt and tensioner removal. Remove the battery cover by releasing the side retaining clips. Warning: the negative battery connections are close to exposed battery positive connections. Use extreme caution to avoid the spanner from shorting on the positive cable whilst loosening the nut. We recommend covering the exposed positive connections with a suitable insulation material such as a plastic bag or electrical tape. Loosen the negative battery cable nut, then slacken and remove the negative battery cable from the terminal. Secure the negative cable out of the way to avoid accidental reconnection. To improve access, remove the upper and lower windscreen cowl panels. Remove both wiper arms. The wiper motor should be in the parked position before removing the arms. Mark the position of the blades on the glass with adhesive tape as a guide to refitting. Unclip the plastic cap and remove the nut underneath, securing the arm to the spindle. Pull or prise the arm from the spindle. If the arm is stubborn, use a suitable puller to remove it. Take care not to damage the trim or the paintwork. Carefully unclip the side trim panels and then remove the side deflectors. At each side, remove the small trim pieces. Noting how it fits, remove the weather seal from the bulkhead. Unclip and remove the main centre section of the cowl panel. Note how the retaining clips lock into the base of the windscreen. Remove the lower cowl panel, starting with the centre brace. Detach any wiring harness clips from the lower cowl panel section. Remove the lower cowl panel fasteners and then remove the panel. Warning: wait until the engine is cold before starting this procedure. Do not allow antifreeze to come in contact with your skin or with the painted surfaces of the vehicle. Rinse off spills immediately with plenty of water. Never leave antifreeze lying around in an open container or in a puddle in the driveway or on the garage floor. Children and pets are attracted by its sweet smell, but antifreeze can be fatal if ingested. If removing and refitting the water pump, drain the cooling system. With the engine completely cold, remove the expansion tank filler cap. Turn the cap anti-clockwise, wait until any pressure remaining in the system is released, and then unscrew it and lift it off. Loosen the relevant front wheel bolts. Then jack up the front of the car and support it on axle stands. Remove the right-hand road wheel. Remove the engine undershield. For draining of the cooling system, the radiator drain tap is difficult to access and requires the removal of the front bumper. To avoid this, the cooling system can be drained by removing the lower main coolant hose connection to the engine. Remove the spring clip from the hose with a suitable tool. Release the hose and catch the coolant in a suitable container. To assist draining, open the cooling system bleed screws on the thermostat housing and on the heater hose. refit the hose to the engine and secure the spring clip. Remove the front section of the wheel arch liner by removing the plastic clips and screws, and then remove the liner from the wheel arch. Using a 16mm spanner, turn the tensioner pulley clockwise to release the tension on the belt. Noting its routing, remove the drive belt from the pulleys. Renault recommend that the tensioner bolt and the belt are replaced once removed. Unbolt and remove the tensioner pulley. The crankshaft pulley must now be removed. There is a small gap beneath the starter motor into which a screwdriver or similar tool can be jammed into the starter ring gear teeth. Note, however, that access to both the ring gear and the TDC timing plug located below the starter motor is considerably easier if the starter motor is first removed. For the removal of the starter motor, disconnect the wiring plug from the intercooler outlet pipe. Loosen the clamps and bolts, then remove the intercooler outlet pipe. Disconnect the wiring plugs from the oil pressure sensor and the oil level sensor. Note the location of the wires on the starter motor and solenoid, then disconnect them. Unscrew the starter motor mounting bolts, removing the intercooler pipe brace along with the bolts. Withdraw the starter motor from the transmission. Check that the centering dowel has not fallen out as the motor is removed and refit it to the transmission face if necessary. Using a long knuckle bar and socket, remove the crankshaft pulley bolt. With the bolts removed, ease the pulley from the crankshaft. Mark the position of the keyway on the crankshaft sprocket, as it is difficult to see once the bolt is refitted. Refit the bolt with a suitable spacer. Remove the rear lower engine mounting. The engine will still be supported by the left and right hand upper mountings. Support the right hand end of the engine with a jack. Place a block of wood on the head of the jack to spread the load on the sump. Unbolt the right hand engine mounting from the engine and body. Unclip the upper timing cover. Note that on some models, the upper cover may be in either one or two pieces. Where it is a single item, release the lower clips and remove the plastic retaining screw. Access to the screw is limited, but it can, if necessary, be prized out from the expansion plug. A replacement will be required for refitting. Note that considerable dexterity will be required to remove the upper cover. Remove the lower timing cover by releasing the clips. It will be necessary to slightly raise and lower the engine to facilitate removal of the timing cover. Unbolt and remove the engine mounting support bracket. Unscrew and remove the blanking plug from the TDC hole on the left-hand front of the cylinder block. The crankshaft must now be turned to the TDC position using a spanner on the crankshaft pulley bolt. Turn the crankshaft clockwise until the timing hole in the camshaft sprocket is approaching the hole in the cylinder head. The hole will be approaching the 9 o'clock position. Insert and tighten the special TDC pin into the cylinder block timing hole. Slowly turn the crankshaft clockwise until its web contacts the timing pin. Now insert the timing pin, or a suitable bolt, through the hole in the camshaft sprocket and into the cylinder head. The engine is now positioned with number 1 piston at TDC on its compression stroke. Check that the mark on the high pressure injection pump sprocket is 1 tooth to the right of vertical. It may be necessary to rotate the crankshaft again to align the mark on the pump sprocket. Also note the alignment mark on the belt. Check that the keyway on the crankshaft pulley is in the 12 o'clock position. For better reference, mark the position of all the sprockets in relation to the engine before removing the timing belt. Loosen the tensioner bolt, then turn the tensioner clockwise to release the tension. If necessary, use a 6mm Allen key in the eccentric hub plate to move the tensioner. Lock the tensioner in the relaxed position and remove the timing belt. Warning: do not turn the camshaft or the crankshaft while the timing belt is removed, as there is a risk of piston to valve contact. If it is necessary to turn the camshaft for any reason, before doing so, turn the crankshaft anti-clockwise by a quarter turn to position all 4 pistons halfway down their bores. Leave the TDC pin tightened into the cylinder block. Unbolt and remove the timing belt tensioner. Discard the tensioner as a new one must be fitted. Examine the old timing belt for damage, which could indicate other problems such as worn or misaligned sprockets. Identify any other problems and correct them before refitting of the belt. Water pump removal and refitting. Check the water pump for play and any signs of a coolant leak. Consider replacing the water pump regardless of its condition, as it is not uncommon for a water pump to leak after timing belt replacement due to the change in loading on the water pump bearing. Slacken the alternator upper mounting bolt and pull it as far out as possible. Loosen the lower mounting bolt, then pivot the top of the alternator outwards enough to access the water pump. When doing this, be sure to prevent any strain on the alternator wiring and disconnect the wiring if necessary. Undo the retaining bolts and remove the timing belt back plate from the cylinder block. Unscrew the 5 retaining bolts. Then manoeuvre the water pump out of position. The original factory fitted gasket is part of the crankshaft end cover gasket. To remove the gasket, fold it over and then cut through the gasket. Recover the pump gasket and discard it. A new one must be used on refitting. Ensure that the pump and cylinder block stroke housing mating faces are clean and dry, and that the locating dowels are correctly positioned. Offer up the new gasket in its dry state and fit the pump assembly. Apply little thread locking fluid to the pump retaining bolts, then refit and tighten them to 10 Newton meters in the order shown. Refit the timing belt backplate cover to the cylinder block and securely tighten the retaining bolts. Pivot the alternator back into its mounting and tighten the bolts to 25 Newton meters. Reconnect the alternator wiring as necessary. Timing belt and tensioner refitting. Clean the cam sprockets and wipe them dry, although do not apply excessive amounts of solvent to the water pump pulley, otherwise the bearing lubricant may be contaminated. Also clean the rear timing belt cover and the cylinder head and block. Thoroughly clean the nose of the crankshaft and the bore of the crankshaft sprocket, and also the contact surfaces of the sprocket and pulleys. Check that the crankshaft, camshaft and high pressure fuel injection pump sprockets are still positioned at TDC and that the groove in the crankshaft nose is pointing upwards. If the pistons have been positioned halfway down their bores, turn the crankshaft clockwise until the web contacts the TDC tool. Fit the new tensioner and check that the tensioner peg is correctly located in the groove in the cylinder head. Slacken the two upper bolts on the camshaft sprocket and remove the lower bolt. The sprocket should be free to rotate on the hub. Fit the timing belt over the crankshaft sprocket first. Followed by the water pump pulley, fuel injection pump sprocket, camshaft sprocket, and tensioner. Align the timing marks on the belt with those on the camshaft and fuel injection pump sprockets, ensuring that the running direction arrows on the belt are pointing clockwise. Note that the belt should be marked with lines across its width to act as timing marks. There should be 19 belt grooves between the timing marks on the camshaft and injection pump sprockets, and 51 belt grooves between the mark on the high pressure pump and the crankshaft sprocket. With the timing marks still aligned, use the 6mm Allen key to pre-tension the belt by turning the tensioner anti-clockwise until the index pointer is positioned below the timing window. Hold the tensioner stationary and tighten the lock nut to 27 Nm. This torque is critical since if the nut were to come loose, considerable engine damage would result. Refit the missing bolt from the camshaft sprocket and tighten all three bolts. Note that the bolts should not be tight against the adjustable slot ends in the sprocket. Refit the crankshaft pulley, then insert the old bolt. After tightening the bolt, remove the timing pins from the cylinder block and camshaft sprocket. Turn the crankshaft 2 complete turns in the normal direction of rotation, but just before the camshaft sprockets are aligned, refit and tighten the crankshaft timing pin. Slowly turn the crankshaft clockwise until its web is contacting the timing pin. Insert the other timing pin through the hole in the camshaft sprocket and into the cylinder head. Slacken the 3 bolts in the camshaft sprocket. Hold the tensioner with the Allen key, then loosen the lock nut a maximum of 1 turn and turn the tensioner anti-clockwise until the index pointer is positioned in the middle of the timing window and at its final setting. Tighten the lock nut to 27 Nm whilst holding the Allen key steadily. Tighten the camshaft sprocket adjustable bolts to 14 Nm. Remove both the TDC timing pin and the camshaft sprocket timing pin. Rotate the engine 2 complete revolutions and refit the timing pins. Check that the pointer on the tensioner is at the midpoint on the index marks. Repeat the tensioning procedure if this is incorrect. Remove the camshaft timing pin. Remove the old crankshaft pulley bolt. Fit a new bolt and tighten it to 120 Nm. Then angle tighten a further 90 degrees. Remove the TDC timing pin from the engine block. Apply sealant to the threads, then refit the blanking plug to the cylinder block and tighten it to 25 Newton meters. Refit the engine mounting support bracket and tighten the bolts to 62 Newton meters. Refit the timing covers using a new plastic screw if required. Refit the right-hand engine mounting to the engine and body and tighten the bolts to 62 Newton meters. Refit the starter motor if removed. Position the starter motor on the location dowel as it is offered into place. Refit the mounting bolts with the intercooler pipe brace and tighten the bolts to 44 Newton meters. Connect the starter wiring connections to their noted terminals. Screw on the nuts and tighten them securely. Connect the wiring plugs to the oil pressure sensor and the oil level sensor. Refit the intercooler outlet pipe. Tighten the clamps and bolts securely. Connect the wiring plug to the intercooler outlet pipe. Fit the new tensioner with a new bolt and tighten the new retaining bolt to 40 Newton meters. Fit the belt loosely around the main pulleys, making sure that it is correctly located in the grooves, and then turn the tensioner clockwise for the belt to be fitted onto the last pulley. Slowly release the tensioner and allow the belt to be tensioned. Check that the belt is taut midway along its bottom run, and again check that the belt is securely fitted into the pulley grooves. Refit the liner to the wheel arch and secure the plastic clips and screws. Refit the engine undershield and refit the right-hand road wheel. Lower the car to the ground. And tighten the road wheel bolts to 110 Newton meters. Refit the windscreen cowl panels. Offer the lower cowl panel into position, aligning the mounting holes. Refit the lower panel fasteners and tighten them securely. Attach the wiring harness clips to the lower cowl panel. Refit the centre metal brace and tighten the mounting bolts securely. Refit the main centre section of the cowl panel. Refit the weather seal to the bulkhead, fitting it the same way it was removed. Refit the side deflectors, then the side trim panels, securing the panels with the small clips. Note that Renault recommends replacing these small clips when refitting. Refit the wiper arms onto their respective spindles, positioning the arms so that the blades align with the tape applied to the glass before removal. Install the nuts securing the wiper arms and tighten them securely. Then refit the plastic caps to the nuts. Connect the negative cable and tighten the nuts securely. Refit the battery cover. Refill the cooling system if the water pump was renewed. Before attempting to fill the cooling system, make sure that all hoses and clips are in good condition and that the clips are tight. Note that an antifreeze mixture must be used all year round to prevent corrosion of the engine components. With the expansion tank cap removed and the cooling system bleed screws already open, slowly fill the system until the coolant level reaches the max mark on the expansion tank. Close the bleed screws in turn when coolant, free from air bubbles, emerges from each one. Start the engine and run it at a fast idle speed, approximately 2000 rpm. As soon as the engine is running, top up the level in the expansion tank if necessary, then refit and tighten the expansion tank filler cap. The cap should not normally be removed when the engine is running, nor when the system is hot. Allow the engine to run at 2000 rpm until the cooling fan has cut in and out 3 times. Stop the engine and allow the engine to cool for at least an hour and preferably overnight. Recheck the coolant level, top up the level if necessary and refit the expansion tank filler cap. The level should be between the min and max marks when the engine is cold.